The conflict between Javert and Valjean, a symbol of post-revolutionary France. Turmoil in post-revolution France and the class system. The setting of Les Misérables takes place in early 19th century France. In the aftermath of the French Revolution, although the monarchy had been overthrown and ideals of liberty and equality had been established, the reality was much harsher. The promises of equality and justice were slow to materialize, leaving a society still divided by class and rife with injustice. The revolution had left behind a society where the poor and marginalized, including former criminals like Jean Valjean, remained trapped in cycles of poverty and discrimination. Laws were still unevenly applied, and the harsh penal system symbolized this disparity. Valjean's long imprisonment for stealing a loaf of bread exemplifies the injustice that pervaded post-revolutionary France. Even after the revolution, social mobility for people like Valjean remained nearly impossible, as they were continually pushed to the margins. This backdrop is key to understanding the central conflict between Jean Valjean, a man trying to rebuild his life, and Javert, an unyielding enforcer of the law. While Valjean strives to escape the weight of his past, Javert sees himself as a guardian of order in a chaotic world. Javert, the defender of law and order. For Javert, law and order are paramount. He views the law as an infallible force, the only thing capable of maintaining the stability of society. In post-revolution France, where upheaval was the norm, people like Javert believed that strict adherence to the law was the only way to maintain peace. Javert's identity is inextricably tied to his role as a law enforcer. He embodies a rigid belief that once someone has broken the law, they are forever guilty in the eyes of society. For him, there is no room for mercy, even when dealing with someone like Valjean, who has turned his life around to help others. Javert cannot reconcile Valjean's good deeds with his criminal past. This inability to see past the law's black and white framework makes Javert's conflict with Valjean inevitable. Valjean's struggle for redemption. In contrast to Javert's rigid legalism, Jean Valjean's life is a story of redemption and moral transformation. After serving time for a minor crime, Valjean wrestles with the burden of his past, but finds a path toward redemption through acts of kindness and service to others. Valjean's journey toward redemption is highlighted by his role as mayor and benefactor, helping those in need and trying to atone for his past sins. His decision to care for the orphaned Cosette, despite having no legal obligation, illustrates his profound sense of moral duty. This commitment to others contrasts sharply with Javert's adherence to the law, which leaves no room for such compassion. While Valjean's moral compass drives him to seek personal redemption, his efforts also reflect the broader theme of mercy and forgiveness. His path is not dictated by law, but by a higher sense of ethical responsibility to himself and to society. The clash of justice and morality. Javert's definition of justice. For Javert, justice is absolute. It is derived from the law, and everyone, regardless of circumstance, must be held accountable under it. His uncompromising stance stems from his own difficult upbringing, and his belief that order can only be maintained through strict enforcement of the rules. Javert believes that the law is the only force capable of preserving society, even if that means disregarding personal circumstances. When faced with Valjean's transformation, Javert refuses to bend. He cannot acknowledge the possibility that someone who has broken the law might change or do good in the world. For Javert, the law is a cold and impartial force, and it must be applied evenly without mercy. Valjean's moral obligation. For Valjean, moral duty transcends the law. He sees his purpose as one of service and redemption, and his life becomes dedicated to helping others. His deep sense of responsibility, as seen in his care for Cosette, and his aid to the poor, represents his belief in moral justice, which stands in stark contrast to Javert's legalistic view. Valjean's path illustrates that true justice involves mercy and compassion. He believes that redemption is possible through good deeds, and that helping others is the highest form of moral obligation. His actions challenge the rigid, unyielding nature of Javert's legalism. The conflict is a reflection of post-revolutionary society. The battle between Javert and Valjean. symbolizes the broader societal tensions in post-revolutionary France. The revolution may have promised equality and justice, but the reality was far more complex. The rigid legal system often clashed with the ethical struggles of individuals trying to survive in a rapidly changing world. Javert's belief in absolute law reflects the continued presence of systemic inequality. In the wake of the revolution, despite the revolution's ideals, the legal system still disproportionately punished the poor and marginalized. Meanwhile, Valjean's moral awakening represents those who, despite their circumstances, sought to create a more just and compassionate world. Their conflict speaks to the difficulty of balancing order and humanity in the face of such societal upheaval. France's revolutionary ideals may have been grand, but the post-revolutionary reality required a rethinking of what justice and equality really meant. Javert's transformation and tragic end. Javert's inner conflict: law versus mercy. Javert's rigid worldview begins to unravel after his encounters with Valjean. He had spent his life believing that law was the ultimate form of justice. Yet, when Valjean spares Javert's life, he is forced to confront the idea that there may be a higher form of justice, one based on mercy and humanity. This moment creates a deep crisis for Javert. His entire identity has been built on the belief that the law is infallible. Valjean's act of mercy forces Javert to question whether blind obedience to the law is truly just, and whether there might be room for compassion in the enforcement of justice. Javert's final act: a symbol of inner turmoil. Ultimately, Javert cannot reconcile these conflicting beliefs. The mercy shown by Valjean destroys his previous understanding of the world. And unable to resolve the tension between law and humanity, Javert tragically takes his own life. His suicide symbolizes the destructive nature of inflexible legalism, when it fails to account for the complexity of human morality. Hugo's social critique: the unyielding nature of law and society's coldness. Through Les Misérables, Victor Hugo critiques the inflexible legal system and its role in perpetuating social inequality. He highlights how laws, designed to maintain order, can often become tools of oppression when they are applied without compassion. Valjean's harsh punishment for stealing bread and his subsequent ostracization as an ex-convict illustrate the cruelty of the system, especially toward the poor. Meanwhile, the privileged classes benefit from more lenient treatment, exposing the inherent inequalities within the law. The confrontation of Valjean and Javert. Hugo's message. The confrontation between Valjean and Javert represents the struggle between two forms of justice, one based on the strict rule of law, and the other on human compassion. Hugo uses their conflict to argue that true justice cannot exist without mercy. While Javert's legalistic justice seeks to maintain order, it often overlooks the moral complexities of individual lives. On the other hand, Valjean's compassionate approach embodies Hugo's belief that justice must be tempered with humanity to be truly just.